Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate that. I also love it if you leave comments, so feel free to leave constructive criticism, questions, how you do things, ideas for videos. Those are all great ideas to leave in the comment section. So today we're going to do something a little different. Maybe a year and a half ago I did a video on one type of freeform casting, bean casting, and that was fun, and I realized I hadn't gotten around to doing broom casting or pine needle casting, and so today I'm going to do that for you. It's a fun technique. It's a good way to use up some of your scrap materials that have left over from other projects, and you get some fun, unique shapes that you can turn into some interesting pieces of jewelry. So part of the fun is that every piece that you do is going to be a little bit different. So this is one of those few projects where I'm going into it where I don't exactly know what I'm going to make, because I'm going to make something based on what turns out in the casting. And so my little sketchbook that I normally show you with a picture is going to just have some instructions on how to do this. So before we get started though, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and I really appreciate what they do for me. I have a new one, Ron F. I wanted to welcome you to my Patreon. I appreciate you signing up. I think you'll find that the group of people over there is super nice and full of all sorts of knowledge, and they're willing to let you pick their brains. So a lot of talented art people over there. Thank you all for being my supporters. I appreciate not only the financial contribution, but the nice environment that you've created over there. So my other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 14,500, which is awesome. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the really nice comments that you leave in the comment section. It makes me happy to know that people are getting something out of these, and that it's helping them to improve their hobby, or inspire them to get into it, or just to help them to get out of a slump. Those kinds of things make me feel pretty good, and I really appreciate you letting me know that I'm helping. I also appreciate the financial contributions, the buy me a coffee, the super thanks. Those things really help with the cost of materials right now, so thank you for that. All right, well, let's get started on this broom casting. This is one of my design idea books that I use to draw up my ideas. I didn't used to do this in advance, but I have found in recent years that it helps me to improve my outcome. And like I said, today, not going to have a lot of sketching, but I did write down some instructions to help organize what you need and stuff. Tried to find some information about the history of broom casting. I couldn't really find much. I know it's been around for a long time. There's basically three types of freeform casting that I hear about much. One is the bean casting, which I've showed in that previous video. If you want to see that, I'll put a link right there. This one, broom casting, and also water casting, where you dump silver into water and it immediately cools. I have had the best luck with bean and broom casting. Sometime I might revisit the water casting to see what we can get, but for now we're just going to do the broom casting. It's called broom casting because they used to use the bristles of brooms to do it. You can still do that as long as you get organic ones. Don't get the synthetic ones because they'll just melt and smell bad and probably be poisonous, so I wouldn't do that. A good substitute, if you can't find an old broom like that, pine needles, the long kind of pine needles. You can find them that have just fallen on the ground underneath a tree and gather them up. Even if they're dry, they work just fine. Or you can use green ones. It doesn't really matter. It works both ways. Some other materials you need, some scrap silver. You're going to need, like I said, organic broom bristles or pine needles. For tools, you're going to need a rubber band. I use a hair rubber band usually. A hot torch that's capable of melting, say, an ounce of silver. 3 pairs of cross-lock insulated tweezers. I like these kind, like this. They work great to hold the pine needles upright. And a steel bowl. I use an old mixing bowl that was stainless steel. And water to put out the fire when the pine needles catch on fire. And you need some sort of crucible. I have a crucible that has a handle on it that works well for this. I put a number 3 tip on my acetylene air torch. This is a number 1. This is a number 3, so you can see it's much bigger and produces a bigger flame. It makes it easier to melt quantities of silver, so that's kind of nice to have if you have that available. I could probably get it hot enough with the 1 tip, but it takes a little bit longer. So yeah, let's go get set up outside, and then we'll do a little bit of broom casting, or pine needle casting in this case. So I'll see you out there. Okay, out in the yard now. You don't get to see me in the yard very often. So I want you to note that I'm wearing some facial protection. I have my Pepe Tools apron on, and I'm going to be wearing leather gloves while I'm doing this. So let's flip this around. Now you can see my setup here. I've got a little stand for my camera, which I'll adjust to point over to this. You'll see that I have a sheaf of pine needles. They're pretty dry because I collected them a year or 2 ago. And I lined them up and put a hair rubber band loosely around them, and then I cut the top off so it's relatively flat. It's important when you're doing this to make them kind of loose, because if you don't, the silver will have a tendency to puddle right on top, and so you want some access for it to work its way down in there a little bit. I have a jar of water to put it out after we pour the silver on it. I have my crucible on a stick. I have some scrap silver. I try to grab some cleanish scrap. I have a pair of tweezers to scrape off any stuff that's in the silver after I get it melted. I got my little starter. So, and then I got my torch here too as well. So, and I put a number 3 tip on it so that I get a great big flame. So let's pick out some scrap silver and do one of these. It's funny, a couple of them stick to the tweezers. For the large part, I missed on that one, so we're going to try it again. Let's give that another try. believe I got it more in there that time. Let's see. Ooh. This is a pretty good one. So I think I can probably work with this, and I may cut part of it off. So that's a pretty good one, and I think I can probably cut this in half this way maybe, and then we'll see what else we can do to make it look cool, and maybe do a pendant with a stone or something. But either way, you get those nice stalactitic kind of looking sort of lines rather than the bean castings like I showed in that early video. Those give you kind of nuggety looking things, but these are more like stalactites in a cave or something. So but that's how you do the bean castings, or the broom castings themselves. Like I said, a lot of people use broom bristles. I find pine needles are easy to come by, and they do basically the same thing. I actually tried toothpicks one time, and it did about the same as this. Maybe slightly bolder lines in it, but either way. So let's take it down and we'll do something interesting with it. Okay, so here's the results of our broom castings. The ones that I thought were interesting were this one, which has some weird little, it might work for some branches or something at some point on a piece. So I'll save that for some future project. And then these two bigger chunks I think are useful. I'll probably save this for some little piece, or if I get another one to make a matching earring or something, although it's maybe a little heavy. I could cut it in half and make a pair of earrings out of it. Those seem to be pretty popular sometimes. But I think I'm going to use this one. Reason being, it's a big hunk, but I'm not going to use the whole thing. I think it's got kind of a split down the middle here. And so I'm going to take the saw and cut it right down the middle and see how it looks. So let's go do that. And then I'm going to take a little time and think about what I want to do with it, and which side I'm going to use. So let's cut it in half. So let's go over to the sawing area. I'm not sure what number blade I have on here, but we'll use it to see how it works. If it doesn't, I'll get a more aggressive blade out. This is pretty thick stuff, so. We've got two kind of interesting pieces now. Also, more flat, so if I want to make them a pendant, it'll be more like lays nice against your sternum there. So I'm going to clean those up, and then I'll think about what I'm going to do with them. And then I'll come back and I'll explain what my ideas are. So. Okay, so when I cut them in half, they look like this. But what I did was I decided I was going to use this one, which is slightly bigger than the other one. It's still a big hunk of silver, because I just like the look of it a little bit better. So we'll set this one to the side, maybe cut it up for other things, or use it for some other kind of piece. And so I filed the back here to get rid of any of the sharp edges from filing. Looks like I missed one right here, so. Usually do that if I'm going to use the piece to make sure there's nothing too lethal. So I'll double check that over again a few times to make sure I didn't miss anything really bad. Oh, there's a kind of a razor sharp right there. I'll be polishing this too, so I'm not too worried about that. So I decided, my wife suggested earlier when I had a piece that I could use, maybe cutting a slice, like slicing it in half at a diagonal, and then putting a stone in there. But I just couldn't find a stone that I liked for that. So I'm going to go with a different plan today, although I suggest that might be a good idea if you do this yourself. And I have these nice Peridot that are about 8x10s, and I thought, you know, that might look really nice sitting up kind of high on the front here, like this. I think that'll be pretty, and just maybe even stunning, so we'll have to see. But I'll need to make a prong setting. I'm not going to show the prong setting part because I'm focusing on broom casting right here, but if you want to see how to do that, I'll put a link to a video right there about it. It's a good thing to learn. Alright, so as you can see, this has this projecting piece right up here, and I thought I would solder on a piece of round wire that kind of continued into a loop like that, and then add a couple of rings to make a bail, and then we'll add that prong setting. So let's put this part together. I found a piece of I think it's 10 gauge maybe? 10 gauge round wire that I have a little bit of left. So I think in order to get it to fit nicely against this, I'm going to use a ball burr and cup the end of this so I can just lay it right on there. And then I'm going to get it soldered together, and then I'll bend that around and solder it over here as well. So I'll be right back. So I kind of created an indent on the end of that piece of 10 gauge round wire, and we're going to solder these two together now. I do something called pick soldering, where I pick up a little bit of solder on the end of this titanium pick, and then I heat the piece up to the flow temperature and touch it where I want it to go. It's a very useful technique to learn, so if you're interested, I'll put a link up there for you. So I'm going to heat this all up, but there's a lot more mass in this one than there is in this one, so it's going to take a little longer to get this up to temperature. And so most of the initial focus will be over here, and then I'll start including this as well until they're both about that temperature, which in the case of hard silver sheet solder, which is what I'm using, is about 1450 degrees Fahrenheit. So so we'll flux it and then do that. This is called a magnesia block. If you've never seen them before, it's more of a soft surface you can push things into. It's handy when you need to get things level, or when you need, like in this case, you wanted something sticking straight up, you can poke it right into the pad. So we'll go ahead and solder those now. It looks like I have some solder right here already. You notice I have my number 1 tip back on. See if we can kind of create a veil around this now, or a ring for the bail anyway. That looks pretty good. So I need to cut this off. Right about there. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then I'll be right back. Yeah, I just cut it off. I didn't even file it or anything. It's pretty close. So I think if I just solder that, will be good. So my friend makes these with rings. You can string a bunch of them together into necklaces or bracelets. You don't have to use them as a pendant. They make nice earrings, although you have to use the kind of smaller ones because they do tend to be a little bit heavy. So, but you can also, like I was doing, you can piece them out, or even solder multiple ones together to kind of get a look that you want. I do that periodically. These things make if you're doing like sort of a landscape pendant or something, they make nice like cirrus clouds if you put several of them like that kind of going sideways. So that's kind of a fun thing to do. Okay, so I got some solder. Let's flux that and solder this on this other side. Chad drops the ball. This is one of those situations where you need to get both pieces hot up to that glow temperature, because right now it's just sticking to the wire. We want it to stick to this big chunk too. Here's a bit of 14 gauge round, which we can make some rings out. I'll make 3 this time maybe instead of 2. Let that sit for a moment. I think I'll do them about this size. Okay, so I'm going to set those to the side for a bit, and I'm going to make that prong setting real quick, and then I'll come back and we'll mount that, and then we'll mount those rings, and then we'll pickle it. Okay, so I'm going to use a little easy paste solder for this last one, just because there's so much mass in this big bottom piece compared to the little setting that I created. And the setting that I created has 8 solder joints holding that all together, so I really don't want anything to move or shift, and so we're going to use something that has a little bit lower melting temperature. These I'm just going to solder like I normally would. As long as I get the rings hot but not the other piece hot, these will solder just fine. Okay, so I've tried to position these solder joint here, here, and here so they're not touching anything. Like I said, as long as we just heat the rings, it shouldn't stick to anything else. Theoretically. Okay, those are going to be much shorter and everything will be all cleaned up. And then we'll see how it looks, but I think this will be pretty. So I'm just going to throw this in the pickle and I'll get it all cleaned up and polished and set that stone. And I'll show you the final result at the end. So I have everything cleaned up and I put a little chain on it. And that's our piece. So I think it turned out quite nicely. It's a heavy piece, but it's got a lot of sparkle to it. That Peridot looks really nice on it, I think. So I'll get some better pictures and put them at the end. Alright, well that was a broom casting project. I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. I'd love it if you take a moment and check out my main channel page. I have 380 plus videos now, and I've been doing 3 per week for almost 3 years now, so there's quite a bit of content. I think you'll find that there's almost certainly something else you find interesting there. Whether you're a beginner or whether you're someone with some more experience, there's content that should appeal to both of those levels. Check some of those videos out, come back, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to visit the video description down below. There's some important links there. There's a link to my ebook if you want to check that out, a link to my merch store so you can get yourself one of those nice design idea books to sketch up your ideas, and there's even a link to my Patreon if you want to check out more about that particular platform. So thanks again for coming. I appreciate you visiting. Take care. Happy silversmithing.